states that we're from and all the states that are around got all kinds of festivals going on, and without going through a bunch of those, I'm gonna send you to the festival guides and reviews.com, and then you could pick your state and it'll tell everything and link to every place that you got going. I looked at the Arkansas, I was like, my goodness, there's a lot of stuff right now. There's not a whole bunch of stuff because there's snow outside still. It's a terrible, terrible thing.
It's currently snowing in Kansas again. Too.
It is currently snowing in Kansas. That is a terrible thing because generally when it's that way, it comes my way, and I don't want it to come.
It's not a lot though. It may have stopped by now. Actually, no, it's still going on.
I don't like it. Not a fan. Not a fan.
I hope you bring us warmer weather because it's supposed to get down to 0 or less tonight.
Yeah, it's not snowing here.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. Anyhow,
hey,
this week what we got is the beginning of our new season and how we're going to do it. Generally, we've been just in Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas. We are not in any one of those states today. We're in the far off land of Tennessee. And we're going to be talking about the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital and Ronnie D. And let me bring him in right now. See where magic puts him.
Right next to me.
You're in the wrong place. There we go. They're all in the wrong place. Still. There we go. All right. This machine. This. I love the program, but it does its own thing every time.
Yeah.
Ronnie.
I think I'll call in today.
We've never met. As a matter of fact, I heard of you because of Heath Edwards, and because he was posting all these pictures and like, oh, that's great, and then the show is coming up. I said, hey man, can you do the show? And he's like, no, I'm not going to do the show. Apparently, so he threw you under.
Wow.
Wow. That sounds like something Heath would do.
Now you got the next 43 minutes, 53 minutes, and just tell us all about yourself.
Okay, you're on.
It's all you now.
I'm gonna go.
Hey, Ronnie, here's my first question. How long have you owned it, Ronnie?
I've owned South Pittsburgh. This will be my 8th year coming up, and then I've owned Harriman for, I believe, 3 years now.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's been with both locations. It's been kind of a battle. When we took over South Pittsburgh, I don't know how many of you have been here before, but it was really
never.
trash.
I would love to go.
Been there once.
Yeah, it was awful.
I'm going to go. So that's all there is to it.
It's an amazing location. I've actually been hunting here. I've been a paranormal investigator. This will be my 26th year.
Wow.
So I've been coming here for probably about the last 15 years. And we're actually in here right now. I'm actually in my room in South Pittsburgh, so it's kind of neat.
Oh, sweet.
Cool. Yeah. So, but I've been coming
So we
here.
see something happen.
I've been here prior to owning it, and it was awful. I mean, it was terrible. And then being an investigator, this was the place that I got to experience my first full body apparition.
Oh yeah,
intelligent apparition. And I remember it happened on the 3rd floor up by the nursery. And the next morning, I actually called down to the old owners and said, I want to buy your building. And she said, no way. And I said, come on, you're kind of letting it deteriorate into nothing. Let somebody, who wants to buy it and take care of it and run it a little bit better. And they weren't having anything to do with it. And it was kind of a unique situation because what happened was then I actually came to a public event a couple of months later, and they were doing a public event here. And I ran into this lady, and this lady and I were talking about how great the building was and take care of it. I really wanted to buy it. I had my first full body apparition experience here, had a lot of activity, and I really, really fell in love with the building. And she says to me, shh. And I said, what do you mean, shh? And she says, well, it's going up for auction because they're not paying their taxes.
Oh.
So she hands me a card and says, give me a call in the morning. And I said, why? And she says, because I'm the lady who's running the auction.
Nice.
So it was kind of a unique situation. So I had actually called her on Monday. And she said, yeah, she gave me all the details, gave me the website of where to do it and all that other good stuff. And it was really kind of neat. I mean, when people say that things are meant to happen, I've never done a public investigation in my entire life before. Came, on that night, met her, She was here as well, and she was actually here to check out the building for the auction. She wasn't really here for the investigation. So, we were kind of chatting in the old ICU, and she was telling me all this stuff, and we're going on. And a couple months later, here I am on
right on.
hospital. But it's really kind of
Wow.
neat. We have a staff of about 30 that are on hand. And when we took over the building, it took us about 6 out of the building.
I believe it.
Goodness. That's
100
crazy.
100 tons.
Our
Wow.
trash bill, about the first 3 months of the building, were about $28,000 in trash removal.
Wow.
Oh my
We moved.
god.
A good example is we moved 1,000 rolls of wallpaper out of the bathrooms on the first floor. We moved, I think it was 98 of those Christmas tree stands. The gentleman that owned it prior to me was a hoarder, and he was a doctor, and he actually used the building. What he did is, I don't know how old you guys are. Well, 58, so you're a little older than me. But remember Sears Roebuck when they had the outlet stores?
Yeah.
The doctor would actually go to these places, and he'd buy out the whole outlet. And he would store it here thinking that he would turn around and sell it somewhere else and make some money. Well, apparently he never got around to it. But one of the rooms had 58 garbage disposals in it. So the first thing I thought was, we'll throw it out on eBay. Well, when we actually started taking the boxes apart, the garbage disposals were like missing that part and this part, and like the Christmas tree stands were all rotted, and the wallpaper was all mix and match. So the only thing we could really do was just call the garbage company and say, bring us a 40-yarder and let us throw stuff away. So I know Daniel Dorsey and I and a bunch of the other people, got together, and we just threw. I mean, it was just incredible. It was just unbelievable. I can't believe how much we moved out. And then Ken, of course, if you were here prior to our ownership, the whole building was full of mold. So
Yeah.
No.
That's why it closed.
Yeah,
That's why it closed.
So
we were the last group, I think, to go through right before it closed.
Yeah, it was awful. So we got in here, put masks on, and we ripped out all the drywall, ripped out all the mold. I mean, I don't know how many man hours it took for us to clean it up, but I remember walking in, as an investigator, and you couldn't take a deep breath because you were worried that you weren't sure what you were going to inhale.
Yeah.
Now you walk in, and it's just, it really, my volunteers and I really, really cleaned the place up. It's just a magical place now to come and investigate. So it was a lot of hard work, and really kind of neat.
I want to come back soon. I had a great experiences there. I really enjoyed it. Matter of fact, Karen just mentioned here, she was with me that day, and several other friends. And chapel was a mess. But where was all that stuff stored? Was that as you come in the front door all the way to the right down the hall?
Well, it was like everywhere. So I don't know.
Was it everywhere? Okay.
It was everywhere. But you guys remember when you walked in? Well, remember it was so bad that she had you park out in the emergency room out back.
Oh, that's true.
Back, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. So we didn't want to do that because we felt that that's really a liability. I mean, it's dark back there. Yep. People coming and going, and some of you guys leave at 2:00 in the morning. Some of you leave. So we wanted to make sure that our front parking lot was the one that everybody used. So the first thing we tackled was that front entrance.
Okay.
And that had everything from big screen TVs to, remember, it used to be antique store. It was an antique store. Yep. So we found out actually asking locals that it was an antique store at one time. It was a pet shop at another time. It was a tattoo parlor.
Oh my gosh.
First closed.
The hospital was.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
First closed was actually a flop house. So when you walked in through the front doors to the left, was a lot of people who, had drug addictions, divorcees. Like, it was a lot of people that were living here that weren't supposed to be living here. And finally, the state and the city shut it down because we had drug overdoses in here. We had people getting murdered in here while they were living here. It was bad.
So there's a lot of energy, not just hospital energy in this place.
And it's really cool. That hallway never gets investigated. Like, it's when you first walk in, it's to your immediate left. And we
my gosh.
Spend some time in that hallway because there was a lot of tragedy. When we were going through the hospital to clean a lot of the garbage, we found like people's whole life stories in there. Like, we had to turn it over, but we found credit cards. We found, like divorce degrees. We found needles. We found, you know what I mean? We found all sorts of things. It was really bad. And what was really scary is looking back, we all investigated in that.
Yeah.
I was like,
wow.
You never really realized it till we, rolled up our sleeves and realized what was in the building. And I remember we have a young lady, her name was Candace, that was working for us, and we were back in Jim's area, which, remember, if you walk in, you go to the right, and that's where Jim lived. And then the back far corner was kind of where his life was. Well, we were back there, and poor Candace, I heard her step, and you hear squish. And I'm like, what is that? She stepped in a bag full of human feces.
Oh.
Ew.
In the building. And so, yes, we had to clear that out. We took her to the, we took her to the
Goodness.
hospital, make sure she was clean and everything. But it was
If
a
you're going to
mess.
take the time to poop in a baggie, would you throw the baggie away?
Maybe
Right?
they were saving her for a rainy day, or
The heat source, to dry it.
I've got
Ew.
so many
Right.
jokes. I could go.
yeah, like I said,
Don't go there.
This would
Don't
be
go
a
there.
5-hour show if I told you guys everything that we found in the building. That still,
I'm
to this
sure.
very day, makes my mouth drop, because we took pictures of everything, and we really tried to stay clean and safe.
Sorry.
And it was just
Not putting that up there.
it was unreal.
Put it up there.
I was laughing at Karen's comment. She said that's called keeping your together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I felt so bad for her. She pulled her feet out. Just, anyways.
Oh,
yeah.
bless her heart.
I got. Were you there? Or was the car still there
The car was there.
in the hallway
Yes, and this is one of the things.
or the
that-
front? Yeah,
Yeah, it was in the
car?
Tri-City Clinic.
Yeah.
in,
it was a car. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Alfa Romero.
Yes.
And you guys remember, so it was in the hallway. So what happened, we found out, is that the old doctor actually used the original reason why he bought the hospital was he had a car collection. And he actually had the cars lined up through all the hallways. And we found out as time went by and he started running out of money, he started liquidating all the cars. And so the Alfa Romero was the last one to stay here. And I remember buying the building. It was included in the purchase. But I remember buying it, and I'm like, oh, God, this thing's just – remember, it was really bad. Somebody tried –
Oh, yeah. Well, there was stuff all over the place,
Yeah.
and like everything fell onto it.
Yeah. The windshield was all cracked. And so the old doctor called me. He says, hey, I don't care about the building. Keep whatever you want. I'm like, well, yeah, we are. But he was like, but I want my car back. And I'm looking at it going, you know what? It's just a liability more than anything else. So we'll give it to him. So we roll it out of the garage. We roll it out of the hallway and onto the back. And I looked at him like, oh my gosh, it wasn't really as in a bad shape as it really looked. I mean, maybe 10 grand to fix it. So then I decided to eBay it. I'm like, it's a $90,000 car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess I blew that one, didn't I?
Oh no.
So we gave it back to the doctor, and I don't know what he did with it.
He could have paid for the trash haul off.
Right?
He probably let it rot.
Yeah. But
I mean, that's what he was doing and letting it just sit there.
Speaking of the doctor, one of the funniest things. So on that day, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. So Dr. Hayes was actually the doctor who owned it prior to us, and he actually practiced medicine out of his house, which is right up the hill. And so he had a lot of people just come to the house, and he would do their medicine, their practice medicine there. So as we're pushing the car out, Dr. Hayes and his son are there. And he says, oh, you're really into the paranormal, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He says, I got a deal for you. And I was like, okay, what's your deal? He says, well, I got a van. So he's telling us the story about a van that he's got in his driveway. And we found out that he had a young lady who was one of his patients that was a heroin addict. And it was the middle of winter, and she was overdosing on heroin. So she walked up to his house, and I guess Dr. Hayes wasn't home. And so she was cold, and it was the middle of winter here. And so she opens up the van, falls asleep in the van. They found her body in August.
Oh no.
They wanted to sell the van because the van had to be haunted.
Yeah. Had
The
to be.
van was never
Had to be.
So the van was never cleaned out. All they took was the body out. But you know what happens to a body
Yeah.
It just,
Liquidate.
in an enclosed car?
That's
So he's like,
great.
yeah, a great deal. I'll sell it to you for 10 grand. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you.
No.
oh,
You
gross.
should give me that
Ew.
amount to take it from you. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Insane.
That's terrible.
No.
So, what's your background history? You did a paranormal investigation, but what do you do for a living before this?
So my background actually, well, as a kid, I was in the restaurant industry. I grew up in the restaurant industry. I became a manager, district manager. Then I actually got in the pet industry, and a lot of people are going to laugh at this, but I was a person who actually sold black tips and white tip reef sharks. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but I actually hooked up with a company out of Indonesia called Intercontinental, and my company actually sent those sharks to public aquariums and that kind of stuff. And taking a step back further, the reason why I got involved in that was I've been a scuba diver since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And my dad and I were actually in Florida one year and we were scuba diving. And I don't know if any of you guys ever watched this or any, but the black-tip reef shark has a migratory pattern that goes from New Jersey all the way down to Florida. And it's generally done during breeding season. Well, my dad and I actually were scuba diving, and the sky, well, it's not the sky, but I guess the surface of the water turned black. And we both kind of looked up. We were just covered with black tips. They were doing their migratory, what do you call it? Their migratory track down. And ever since then, I fell in love with sharks. And I was like looking at them, and it was just amazing. I made a couple of phone calls. Next thing you know, here I am making a living off shipping sharks. And then I got into the pet industry, started building fish tanks. And then I got bored with that and got into the paranormal.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. How do you segue into that?
How did you get into the paranormal from sharks?
Well, the paranormal, I think, like most
They're
of
scary.
Pardon?
I said they're scary.
Yeah. Well, most of us, I think, with the paranormal, I got involved in it because, like you guys and everybody else, I watched a TV show and I heard my first EVP. And you go up to the TV going, yeah, whatever. That's like, come on. So I was like, gotta go out and try it myself. So we rented a location, went out and tried it. I got my first EVP, and I was hooked.
As soon as you get that first wow evidence,
I'll probably say the same thing. And I think what's cool about the paranormal, it's kind of like a legal drug, because you get your first EVP and then you want more. You want more.
And more. Yeah.
And that's what's cool about like this whole thing with the hospitals. You're providing other people to have that experience that you had. So that's awesome that you're putting all this effort and having a place for like idiots like me who want to get in there, and then new people who get in there and experience. Because I know I've been a medic for 40 years, and hospitals, even current hospitals that are in operation, they're all creepy.
Well, I think one of the things that's really neat about a hospital, and I tell this a lot, because we give like a little speech, before we do a public investigation or whatever, but a hospital is the only building in the world that has everything from birth to death and everything in between. So think about all the trauma, but think about also all the good times that are in a hospital.
Yep.
And it goes both ways. And then you got healthcare workers that are putting that energy in too. And you have to remember that our old hospitals here was before the times that there were really labor unions involved and that kind of stuff in the medical field. So our doctors here, it wasn't uncommon for them to work an 18-hour shift, take a nap in the back room, and go to another 18 hours.
Yeah.
And nurses doing the same thing, and everybody spending all that time here. So you've got somebody who is working hand in hand with somebody who might be sick or recovering or giving birth. And that energy that they're getting as a healthcare worker is also ingrained into the building. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the only buildings in the world that's got so much energy, both positive and negative, and everything in between. I mean, how could it not be active?
Oh yeah, that's just any given shift at an ER. Right. You can see people going through, like you're saying, somebody's going into labor, so having a really happy moment, and then somebody's dying in the very next room, so a very sad moment. Right. And you could be sitting there, like me as an X-ray tech with my portable machine, and just seeing all this different stuff just going on. All I'm doing is swiveling my head from left to right. Right. So yeah, hospitals are crazy. And I also like to bring up that you hear them talk about Waverly Hills, and they're like, 60,000 people died in this facility. I said, that's nothing. It probably happened that both the hospitals here had totally eclipsed that number. So if you have that going on, so hospitals are just cool.
Over the lifetime of a hospital, for
sure. During your time of having it, have you ever brought any kind of skeptics? Adrian's not there yet, so he's not included. Any skeptics to the hospital, and how did that change their view?
Oh, how many stories do you want? My favorite is, so we do a public investigation at both locations. We do them basically every 2 weeks. So we do one here 1 month, and then 2 weeks later and what's really, really funny, and no offense, guys, but it's always this guy who's like 6'2", 330 pounds, and he looks honestly looks like he just got out of the army, like big buff guy. And his wife is like 100 pounds, maybe 5 foot, and he walks in like this, and she walks in like this, and he's like, "There's no such thing." And within an hour,
Of course.
she's sitting in the car shaking because he either got touched or whispered or saw something, while his wife is going, "Yeah, bring it on, more."
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
to me, when we're doing a public investigation, I generally sit at the front. I don't want to get involved in the investigation because I don't ever want anybody saying, "Oh, Ronnie's setting this."
No, I want to watch the
building,
people.
I don't want anybody to ever say that. So if I'm at the front, it's not me. It's definitely something happening. So when everybody kind of exits, especially when they leave early, we kind of give them a little interview. And I've seen guys who, like I said, who are 6 foot shaking. Literally walking out the door going, "I can't believe that just happened." Like, what happened? I had a guy a couple months ago who had somebody whisper in his ear, "Get out." And there's nobody around him. And he literally walks up there to me and he's like, "I can't believe it." He says, "I was the only one in that room." And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "That's welcome to paranormal investigating."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, we have a whole hospital about 45 minutes away from us, and currently are not allowing people to investigate. But we used to do events out there, and we'd have those same people. There's no such thing as ghosts. They're just there because their girlfriend's into it and stuff like that. And you're there with them because we have to make sure they don't, they stay on the floors or whatever. And you hear that suck air moment when they finally see it, and they're like, and then I've seen them shaking. I've seen them like, "Okay, I need to leave," and the girlfriend's like, "I'm staying here. You go wait in the car." And they've done it. I'll be out in the truck eating Reese's. Okay,
That's funny.
I would
go.
say that's a normal thing, and it's generally not the women. The women generally embrace it. They're kind of like, "Oh, this is really cool," and the men are just like, I don't know what it is, but the men are generally the ones who are like, "Yeah, that's just too much. I'll go wait in the car."
Well, see, I did that because my wife was a believer. I was not. And when I finally had my first experience, I could see why people would turn tail and run because it rattles you. But I wasn't rattled. All it did was pique my interest.
Right.
And so if this is real, that's real, then let's figure out what that is. Because I also came at it from a really deep faith base. So is it rattling my faith? And it didn't. But I just want to know, okay, how is that a thing? Because I was always told it's one or the other, nowhere in between. And so now I know a little different.
Well, see, and here's the thing, like I was raised Catholic, very strict Catholic in my house. So we're talking the same background here, is that we're not allowed to believe in this. And I'll say it, you either believe in, demons and devils or in angels, and there's no in between. And so, I kind of came up with a theory, and I don't know, but I was just like, so if you go with Newton's law, where energy is never, created or destroyed, I was just like, all 5 of us here, if you go with energy, I mean, everything about us is energy. So here's my question: is why
lacking in energy?
Pardon? Especially on a Sunday morning after drinking. But in all seriousness, though, why can't a person be comprised of a spirit and a soul? And so when you pass away, your soul goes to wherever it's supposed to go, but your spirit or the energy of you is still here. So I mean, and so
kind of got the same kind of idea.
I have that conversation with people, and they're kind of like, "No, but where does your energy go?" Like, in all seriousness, I mean, where does that energy go? So I believe that's what we're dealing with. And so why can't there be an intelligent energy that's left behind? We know there's a residual because, I mean, we've all seen it. We've all experienced it. We've all seen things move on their own. I mean, so why can't there be that other part of it where there is actually an energy that is intelligent and that's left behind? But I'm a firm believer, like I said, in God, and I believe that you go where you're supposed to go after death. But I want to know where that energy is. And I think, to me, that's what we're studying.
I agree.
And we never know this side of life.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We're getting close, though, at 50.
We're getting closer. But yeah, let me bring up a couple of these pictures here. I had to steal these because he was supposed to send me pictures if he's still on, but he didn't. So I had to steal them.
Funny.
And I stole them from pictures that he had posted. First off, I'm gonna put that up there. That's your logo for the hospital. I don't have the Harriman Hospital because I didn't know we'd talk about that one at all.
It's okay. Harriman's very similar. It's just a little bit different of a shape. So this one's kind of round, but Harriman is more of a because in the front of the building we have kind of a monarch or whatever that's called. And that's kind of the shape of it. Look at that beautiful building.
That's
You really do.
I'm going to say that as a Dark Moon Paranormal come out there, and they had Dark Tricks Photography. So these pictures are all from Dark Tricks Photography, and I'm assuming it's she. The only things I've ever seen were females attributed to Dark Tricks, but they got a very specific style. I kind of like it. So kudos to them. I did send them a message. But when was this building built?
1958, opened in 1959, and then it's had 5 major
Blood Moon Paranormal. I'm sorry, I had Dark Tricks and Blood Moon. Okay,
you're close.
Heath is listening. He said, "I'm sorry," but yeah, really kind of cool place. I love a creepy hallway.
Well, what's really neat too is the first picture that you've shown, where it's the 3-story building that's in the front. I remember my first time showing up here, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's it? How are we going to spend 10 hours in that little building?" But you don't realize there's 40,000 square feet behind that building.
Back further, you keep going back and back. Yep.
Those hallways are great. And put a chair in the middle of a hallway, it's just creepy. I like it. But no, this place is easy to spend a week there, because you can spend a whole investigation in ICU.
Oh yeah,
alone.
Yeah, it's
oh my gosh.
I think it's really neat because when we're working on it, which we do a lot of work, anybody who knows these old buildings, I mean, it's a constant love of work, and it's really super active when we're working. It's kind of like, and I'll tell you a really neat story. So we have a gentleman, his name was Dan Dorsey. Used to work with us. He's done his own thing. He's actually doing a paranormal group now on his own. But we were actually looking for the water main on the 3rd floor to shut the water off. And it's really neat because we tell this story all the time. But we were up on the 3rd floor. And if you remember, Nellie's room is all the way towards 11th Street. And then the other side is on the one end.
It's on the
other end is the OR. So it's like it's almost a whole block away. So we were actually in front of Nellie's room. And Daniel says, jokingly, because we were just joking around, because we were getting frustrated, we couldn't find the water main. He goes, "Does anybody know where the water main is?" And all of a sudden you hear this voice on the other side of the hospital go, "It's over here." And Daniel and I were the only
They're helpful.
ones here. And
that's
so
even better when they're helpful.
Well, so Daniel's like, we both look at each other like, I said, "You heard that too, right?" And he says, "Yeah, I heard that." So I'm like, "What do we do?" He goes, "Well, let's go walk over there." So we walk over there. And Daniel's a real tall guy. He's probably about 6 foot, 6'1" maybe. So he just reaches up and kind of moves one of the ceiling tiles, and there's the water main right where we heard the voice.
Nice.
Daniel goes, "Thank you," and you hear, "You're welcome," and then footsteps walking away. Daniel looked at me and he goes, "And you think this place isn't haunted?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!"
You know what? That's the best time. You never get it on
the first week of owning the hospital. That was like in the first week.
Incredible.
I'm like, how does it get better than that?
No kidding.
See, that's a great lead into my next question. Everybody, you said you own the place. You've been there several times. Tell me some of your best experiences there.
There's so one of the best experience. Well, a couple of them that all involve Jim. So I don't know if any of you guys know who Jim. Jim is on the 1st floor. When the building closed, he became the caretaker of the building. So it was him and a couple of his buddies that actually lived here. So when you're walking in the front doors, his apartment was to the right. And in the early days, when you investigated the building, he had that apartment kind of locked off, and he let everybody investigate. He was also in charge of the whole building. He was the caretaker. What was really unique about him is when I was investigating the hospital, he was a bad guy. He was a pedophile. He was a drug abuser. He would beat his kids. I mean, like the stories that we heard about him were just awful. So it was kind of unique that when people would investigate him, they would try to be aggressive with him. Like, "Oh, so I heard you're this, I heard you that." And so Jim had a very good spirit. So we had a young lady, her name was Renee, and we were standing out in the front corridor, and we're actually talking about Jim. And I said I want to get to the bottom of them because I know that there's more to the story than what we're hearing. As we're talking, I had shoulder length hair at the time. And as we're talking, my hair got grabbed onto and pulled back so hard that I went kind of like this. And Renee's standing in front of me and her eyes light up like saucers. And she's like, holy shit. And I was like, yeah. And so it was like trying to grab our attention. So I was like, so, you know, Renee and I were still having the conversation. And I said, I wonder how much of this is really true. And we were kind of going on and communicating about it. And I got a second pull. And it was even harder than the first pull. And Jim and Renee's like, we're onto something here. Like something, you know, something's not right. So I was like, okay, you know, kind of ignored it. Kind of shook me a little bit because it was aggressive. It wasn't kind of like that, you know, that loving little. It was a little on here, and you know, and Renee's standing there going, you know, Renee lives right down the road, and so she's like, I'm here all the time. I've never seen that happen. So I was like, okay, you know, whatever. So it was a couple of days later, and once again, like I said, we were pulling down drywall. We were sanitizing the walls to get rid of the mold. And I was here. It was about 2:00 in the morning, maybe 2:15. And I'm sorry, guys, but I'm a huge Nickelback fan, so I've got the Nickelback jamming. I'm scrubbing down the walls. And
okay, show's over. No,
Hey, I like Nickelback. You hush.
I get a lot of harassment because they're like one of my favorite bands. But I'm not afraid to admit it. So apparently Jim doesn't like them because I'm scrubbing away, and it's like 2:00 in the morning. I hear "Get out" in my ear, and I turned and I looked, and I was like, "Whoa, okay." Thought I was just whatever, so I kept scrubbing away, and I said, "Get out."
Oh, geez.
So I got on the phone and I called Renee. I said, Renee, what do I do? What do I do? And she used some nasty words, and she said, what are you up? Get back in there and clean. And I was like, okay, can't be that bad. So I went back in there and I'm scrubbing, and I hear it's time to leave, and really stern voice. Well, it kind of shook me up. So I went outside again. I called Renee. I said, whoever this is wants me to leave. And Renee says, well, don't be stupid. Then just leave. So, well, you just called me a nasty name a little while ago. And so I go inside and I go to clean up and turn Nickelback off because apparently Jim didn't like Nickelback at 2:00 in the morning. Well, in the water puddle are actually boot marks that are walking through the water puddle and around the corner and kind of disappeared into the corridor. I was the only one in the building, and I wear gym shoes.
Yeah.
So I called Renee and I'm like, Renee, you need to come get me because I'm scared. Because at that point in time, I wasn't sure if it was a human, if it was a ghost, if it was Jim.
What it was, yeah.
So I called the police department. The police department came. We all did a walkthrough. There's nobody in the building. It was just
thinking you're crazy.
So I showed the police. We all locked the door. I went to the hotel and we left for the night. But getting back to poor Jim, so that Candace lady that I was talking about. So Candace and I took a night. We went through Jim's stuff. If you guys remember, he had a little room and there was just stuff piled from floor to ceiling. And so one of the things that everybody said was he was gay, and that he molested children, and there was like so many things I heard bad about him. So Candace and I went through all of his paperwork. We spent about 32 hours of straight being awake going through all of his stuff. And so we took it all back to the hotel room. And the first thing we open a box to is like an online dating profile that he had printed out. The first thing it says is, I haven't found the woman of my dreams. So like, check. Well, we know he's not gay. So then we went through and we were starting reading like other things that we're going through. And we found out that Jim was actually a really stand-up guy. And the drug abuse that he was supposedly he actually was shooting insulin or whatever you do when you're diabetic. So the needles people found in the building were not heroin needles. They were actually
a drug abuser.
Yeah, he was actually diabetic.
Wow.
And so when we did the research, we realized that Jim, when he was a child, actually got beat by his dad to the point where he was unconscious. So he actually left his mom and dad's house at a very early age and joined the Army and became a paratrooper, was honorably discharged from the military because he was diabetic, and then went on to become a janitor at Ringley Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, and later became a set designer and started designing sets for the circus.
Wow.
Interesting.
Oh, it is awesome. Going through all of his stuff. I've got a ringleader jacket that he wore with the hat. I've got all sorts of letters of customers or clients. who were thanking him for the great experience they had there. We've got books and books full of his sketches that he did for the circus. I've even got his retirement checks from when he retired from the circus and was living in the building. So he was a really, really colorful guy that was just really, really unique. Now, Jim did have one fault. He liked smoking pot. He actually did a whole like cartoon thing, and I think it was called Pot Man. And he did a comic book series that was based off of a young man who was smoking pot all the time and doing really stupid things. But it was really funny. So going backwards, we now tell the story about Jim and how true to, what a great guy he really was. And I don't get my hair pulled anymore. Now I just get little pats on the,
Yeah.
But what you'll find is people who are actually.
You still mad at Nickelback?
Pardon?
Did you still get pissed off at Nickelback?
No, I try not to play it here anymore because I don't think he likes it. But he's really kind of upbeat. And if you like go into his room and you play like CCR or some of the classic music, classic rock music, he'll interact with you. I mean, he'll do things that are really, really cool. So his whole apartment has really changed. I remember, Kenneth, you used to come in and you'd walk in, the Doobie Brothers, you'd walk into the hospital and it would feel really dark. Not, I don't know, dark, but real heavy. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that there were so many stories being told about the hospital that were untrue that, like I said, if me or you, if I'm saying, Ken, you're this, you're that, you're gonna lash out.
Well, he's upset about it, and he's holding that grudge against the world at that point. So
of course, nobody likes to be misrepresented.
Correct. But after you found out all this good information, did you actually go back into the room and chat with them about everything you found?
We do it regularly, and we tell our guests that too as well, that times have really changed. So what we try to do is, there's so much on the internet prior to our ownership that's out there. Like, we try to get rid of all the myths. Like one of them is that Indians were slaughtered on our grounds. And I mean, there's so much stuff that I'm like, where did this come from? Well, we all know, guys, that when you sell horror, it's a lot better than selling purity.
Oh,
and the old owners were trying to scare everybody into like, oh, this place is this and this place is that. And I think that's where that whole kind of, I don't like to use the word dark.
It's kind of sad because it's just as interesting light as it is dark.
I think it's
and there are so many people, the paranormal teams, that come up with these theories and then they run and they put it out there like it's fact. And I know that by the little hospital I was talking about over here, is that, people always talk about the morgue. And it wasn't a morgue, it was a kitchen. And just because there's a walk-in refrigerator doesn't mean that's where they store dead bodies. And it was so how quickly it becomes a thing. It's a morgue. It wasn't. So, but and hospitals, a lot of people, that's why I like investigate hospitals. Like I said, 40 years in them. I walk down there, it feels like home, no matter what hospital I'm at. Everything makes sense to me. Right. And so, especially if I'm in radiology, I'm like, this is home.
Hey, Ronnie, when I went there, I guess the prior owners, probably just before you got there, excuse me, they had set up a lot of rooms for groups, and the groups would furnish these rooms. And I know we were able to go into some of them, during investigation or whatever. A lot of them were locked. Is that stuff all gone now, or? Yeah.
So when we took over, and I don't know how they got away with it, but when they took over, they were allowing investigators and people to sleep in the building, which is really a fire hazard and a code violation. So we had to get rid of everything. We still have some rooms in the building that are locked because I do have a staff of 30. So when my staff is here, we've got a couple of rooms that are allotted to them so they can bring their equipment in. When you guys do an overnight investigation, we lock ourselves in the room so that just for security reasons, we don't get involved in your investigation or go out and bother you at all.
Sure.
But we do have video monitors for the outside of the building just to make sure that nobody pulls up or anything like that. Because we do, I mean, people call us abandoned, but we're really not. I mean, it is a business. It is a place where we investigate. But we want to make sure that our guests are protected and that if something does happen, there's somebody on site to make sure that, we're taking care of that. And one instance, we actually caught where the group is here one night. Our front doors, you got to pull them to get them shut. And the group was out investigating, and 3 teens came up to the front door. They didn't shut the front door, walked right in, and started walking throughout the building.
Yeah.
And so because we're here, we got them out and ushered them out the front door. So we're primarily here just for the safety purpose of it. And then once you guys leave, we go through the building and lock it up, make sure everything's good, and then we go home.
So there's power in the building?
Yes, we have
just
power.
two?
Yeah, we have
So
power.
if
We have water.
So teams come in, they have a DVR system and stuff like that they're able to plug in. That's cool.
Nice.
So I
Shannon
want to go back to
Humphrey,
something you
she's on
said
there.
earlier. You said you saw your first full body apparition there.
Oh, I did.
Tell me about that.
So we were, my group and I came up from Chicago. I think it was kind of like on a spur of a moment thing, which was really nice about South Pittsburgh because back then it wasn't rented a whole lot. So we called the owner. Well, I guess we called the manager, and we said, "Hey, blah blah blah." We made a reservation, and we came up, and we were up on the 3rd floor. It was myself and Zach, and we were up on the 3rd floor. And you've been up on the 3rd floor. It's pitch black up there.
Yeah.
And it was about 2:00 in the morning. And honestly, it was one of those nights that nothing was going on. It was like one of those nights where you're walking through the hallways going, "Yeah, this place is really haunted. God, we just wasted $600."
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing going on. So part of the group went to a different location of the building, and Zach and I went up to the 3rd floor. And Zach's like, "Hey, we're in the nursery. Why don't we play a baby crying?" Because one of the claims of the building is even when it was open, they would have babies crying on the 3rd floor. The last baby was born here in 1983, but the building closed in 1999. So in that 16-year period, there were people who were still witnessing babies crying up on the 3rd floor.
Oh yeah.
One of the health officials that were here actually heard it. So we were like, "Oh, we'll give it a try." So Zach throws his iPhone on the ledge, and he's got a baby crying. And probably within maybe a minute or two, we both heard like kind of movement going on by where would the nurse's station be. Well, all of a sudden we saw a figure kind of self-illuminated, kind of walking towards us, and it was a nurse. And I remember looking at her, and she looked at me as if to say, "What are you doing on my floor?" She kind of looked over at Zach, and then she kind of made her way around the corner. The door opened, and she just kind of disappeared. And I remember it was, like I said, it was like 2:00 in the morning. It was pitch black. I reach over to Zach because I'm not going to lie, I was a little shaken. I reach over to grab for Zach, and he's gone. I'm like, "Where the hell did Zach go?" I'm on the 3rd floor, all by myself.
I'm out.
And I was like, and I ran so quickly down the hallway. Went to the crew. They had that little room that they would call, like the crew, or not the crew room, but the whatever you call it, the investigator room or whatever.
That glass enclosed one.
So I ran down there, and Zach's sitting like on the chair doing this, like kind of rocking back and forth. And I was like, "So you saw it?" And he says, "Oh yeah." So our group was kind of unique because we were together for so long. We never told each other what we saw because we didn't want to convince each other what we saw. So
yeah,
I told Zach, I'm like, "Hey Zach, do me a favor. Let's draw what we saw." So Zach is actually a graphic artist. It's kind of neat. That's what he went on to do in his life, and I'm not. So I draw a stick figure with, a nurse's hat and some long hair.
Sounds like me.
I'm done in about
not an artist.
Bad stick figures.
Zach, like 15 minutes later, is still drawing. And I'm like, "Dude, speed this up, all right?" So we flip it over, and my stick figure and his beautiful nurse, kind of look the same, but not really. And he was like, "Yeah, that's what I saw." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I saw." Zach has never investigated since that night. And that was the night when the addiction to the paranormal really became like overwhelming. Like it was like,
Oh, wow.
It was like an experience I'll never forget. It was really unique.
Totally get it.
Now that
it was just phenomenal.
What you call in the nursery, is that kind of like a waiting room? Room here, and then there's nurses' stations, or the windows, where cashier or whatever.
No. So that's the old part of the building. So this is on the 3rd floor.
Okay, the 3rd floor.
So if you go up the 3rd floor, and the elevators are, you go up like let's say the elevators are to your back, and you go up that staircase, you'll come out and you go across into where the nurse's station would be on the right, and then on your left would have been the nursery, and then the delivery rooms, and then to your back of the nursery would have been recovery. So it's kind of in the whole surgical suite of the building on the 3rd floor.
Okay, because I remember, and a couple people that are watching tonight, we were in that what I'm calling is like a waiting type room. It was a room. I'm against the wall, looking out towards, I'm guessing, the hallway. There's to my left would have been like two windows, almost like where you would sit to talk to a nurse behind the window. And to the right was a big room, but then you go straight across, that wall would end, and then you'd go around the side to go, I guess, to another room or down the hallway or whatever.
So you're talking ICU and CCU. That's on the second floor.
Second floor. Okay. Because that's where I had my major experience, because I must have went back into time, because we were all sitting there and I actually saw an older grandma, basically. She was Spanish. She had two grandkids with her. They were sitting in the corner. She's reading a newspaper, laughing at our comments because they were just totally off the wall. And then there was an older man sitting. These are all spirits. There was an older man sitting to my right in a rocking chair, and he just kept leaning forward. And by the time we got ready to go, he was practically on the floor, almost doing a flip. A nurse came around the corner, walked around the corner. Two nurses peeked out of those windows in that doorway there. And the kids were running around the room, and they kept poking Patty. I don't know if you're on the call or on the show tonight watching, but they kept poking her knee and her back.
Wow.
And I'm watching all this happen. Somebody tried to speak Spanish, and the lady, the grandma who's sitting back in the corner, she pulled up her newspaper, and I could see her going like this. I knew she was laughing. She pulled the thing down and like this, and she's like, terrible Spanish, and it was just the most hilarious. That I don't know how long that lasted. I'd say maybe 5 minutes or so.
Wow.
But just watching this whole thing, so that whole area was amazing. Oh, yeah. Absolutely amazing. Can't forget that one, just like you can't forget your apparition.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, some of the things that people have experienced here. I know, it's really unique because I was like you. I was up in the OR one night, and it was just me. I was just sitting in there, and I lost probably maybe 15 or 20 minutes of time up there. And I remember like walking. I remember it very vividly. I actually kind of witnessed the surgery go on, and I can tell you like exactly like what happened during that surgery. I saw the whole room. I saw the surgeons. and it was really kind of unique because I just was sitting up there, and I could visualize exactly what was going on. And I come out of and then it was like a dream almost, and it just kind of faded away. And I left the OR, and I'm telling everybody about it, and they're like, "Oh, come on!" And then we had somebody else experience the same thing.
Yeah,
so
and
it's little like glimpses into that world,
into the past. Yeah. They're like little portals occasionally, and they're kind of floating. So you just never know where they're going to show up. But if you're really just zoned in and paying attention, you're going to end up walking into one of these things, which is really, really interesting, I find, as long as you can get back out.
That's the object, right?
That's the objective, yes. But it's so incredible just being in. I mean, the woman in their grandmother was interacting with me, so it was like almost like a full-bodied apparition. But I was back in time, interacting with this woman. It was just crazy. It's a cool place. It's a really cool place.
The hospitals are just
I can't wait to go.
And now you got okay, now we're talking about the Pittsburgh hospital, but you also got the Harriman Hospital. Would you say they're about equivalent as far as activity goes, or? Well,
I think this is going to be really hard because Harriman we just purchased, like I said, about 5 years ago. And so Harriman was closed for about 13 or 14 years prior to our getting it. So I think South Pittsburgh is a little more laid back in terms of like its activity, whereas Harriman is chomping at the bit to tell its story.
Yeah.
We have a ton of people at Harriman that have just outrageous like experiences, and it's really unique. I mean, that hospital. Well, just to kind of give you an idea, South Pittsburgh, Ken, you've been here. It's 68,000 square feet. Harriman is 186,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Holy
wow. 3 times the size of this building. And Harriman actually spans from 1938 all the way up to 2009, I want to say, in terms of the life expectancy or the I don't know what the word is, but in terms of the architecture of the building,
Yeah.
Okay.
when you're walking through the building, like the old part of the building, which is in the 30s, still has the really thick marble, like nurses stations.
Oh wow.
And you walk into the 50s and it's got the green tile on the OR rooms. And then you walk into the 1990s and it's got the regular operating room that we're accustomed to seeing now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of movies from Hollywood actually shoot there because they can shoot like one movie and go through 3 different time frames in one location.
Yes, that's great.
Really, it's a fantastic building.
Now,
And
Harriman, he showed pictures on his side. The first one that caught my attention, I guess, because it had a X-ray room in there. So does Pittsburgh still have the X-ray equipment in there too, or
South Pittsburgh's got the equipment in it? Harriman has got everything but that. So we've got the old OR, like what do you call it, lights and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But all the equipment's gone from Harriman. Harriman closed down and just moved across town, so they took everything.
So they moved some of their equipment with them.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get that.
Right.
No, that's awesome. I am currently well, not now. I'm talking to you, but with my wife about scheduling a trip out that way, and I want to hit both those hospitals. So how would tell the billions of people out there now, how would they get a hold of you, or how would they sign up to get on there? How would they know what they are, prices, blah blah blah? Plug yourself.
To the billions of people watching our show today. So you can reach us on Facebook, obviously, at Old South Pittsburgh. I think it's Haunted Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, or you can go to Old Historic Harriman Hospital on Facebook. And then, of course, they both have websites. One of them is osphprc@gmail.com. And then the other one is oldhistoric-harriman-hospital.com. Both locations are from 6 p.m. till 4 a.m. Both prices include up to 8 people. I believe South Pittsburgh is $600 plus, and then Harriman is $850 with tax included. And like I said, that's a private investigation. You get the whole buildings to yourself for 6 p.m. to 4 p.m. up to 8 people. And then we do a weekday special, which we do half off. So if you are able to come out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
That's when I'd be hitting.
We do OSP with $350 plus tax, and then we do Harriman at $450 plus tax.
And same thing, up to 8 people.
Same thing. Yep, up to 8 people. The only difference is the time's a little different. We do 7 to 3. It's 7 p.m. to 3 p.m. because it is during the weekday. And our people who are in the buildings obviously have a job, so we want them to come after work, and then they do that investigation, or they do the the chaperoning of you. But both locations are quite amazing. I mean, like I said, Harriman I think is really on fire because it's really trying to tell its story. And we're discovering all sorts of new things about Harriman daily, so it's kind of neat.
That's awesome. No,
that is amazing.
I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm gonna. That sounds like
we're halfway
great,
there. We're halfway.
We are.
It sounds like a great place to burn some PTO. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not too far from you guys, and you know what? It's a really nice drive. Harriman is a quaint little town. Directly across the street from the hospital is what's the name of the subdivision there? There's a subdivision that's really storied. What's the name of it? Oh, there's Cornstalk Heights, which is directly across the street from Harriman. That's actually got the original hospital in it that's now converted to a real house. But there's all sorts of stories about ghosts up in that area. Harriman was kind of a really unique town, is that it was built on the temperance movement. So it was kind of a purity movement that gone bad. I think the whole town is either burned down, flooded, or had a tornado go through it.
Oh my God.
First land. I mean, it's just been really unique. Talking to the people, I think the high school has burned down a couple of times.
Wow.
There's been a couple of hotels that have burned down a couple of times. And then they had a huge flood that went through that actually a lot of people lost their lives on. And then a tornado went through too. So yeah, just really, really, really kind of a bad situation. Town's beautiful though. It's in a rebuilding process. There's a couple of bed and breakfasts that we work with in the area that you can get some really good rates with, and then hotels as well too. And then of course everybody knows South Pittsburgh is such a quaint little town as well too.
Yeah. How far apart are those two?
Exactly 2 hours, straight down 27.
So 2 hours.
Wow.
And I know.
At 27 to 24, it's almost a direct shot. I mean, you go 27 to 24, It's they're real easy to get to.
Very
Okay.
cool.
Did we lose somebody?
Yeah, we're
We did. We lost Adrian. He'll be
Adrian.
back.
the host of the show is gone.
Oh, he
Yeah.
Okay.
said.
So 2 hours.
That's
funny.
Okay. And I'm trying to think, what's the
There
big
he is.
town? What's the big town close to you?
My internet died.
Knoxville is close to Harriman, and then
Knoxville.
Chattanooga. And
Chattanooga. That's like 30 minutes
Ah.
away, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on
Chattanooga.
what part of Chattanooga you're going to and the traffic.
Okay.
Well, if you're riding with Pam, it might be sooner.
Hey.
So,
She's
so,
in a
both,
speed demon, huh?
so both these
With the
places,
speed.
you cannot stay there all night.
Correct.
I mean,
Yeah, correct.
during the period of time that
My hotel room will be in Pigeon Forge. It's only a 3-hour drive from OSPH, so no problem. I can do that.
Oh,
I can do that. Hey,
Pigeon
Ronnie, we
Forge, I
gotta
love it.
wrap this up. Don't go nowhere. We're gonna chat a little bit
Sounds good.
post show. Sorry, all I had to bounce. Apparently, my internet just decided to die, and there it went. And here I am. Now I'm gonna say bye, folks. Bye.
Bye,
Hey,
bye.
wait a minute. Next week.
Wait,
Next week.
wait,
Who we
wait.
got next week? Who do we have?
Adrian
next
got
week?
rattled.
I don't know who we have next week. I don't know
While
the
you're
calendar.
looking, Karen's on there. She said there's some really cool cemeteries in South Pittsburgh too, as well as some really cool.
Oh, we
Cemetery.
have.
We can talk
Yeah.
about that on the next show because there's a
Shannon
really
Humphreys on Facebook too, and she's saying
Yeah.
both places are really cool. She loves them both. Definitely worth the
Next
ride.
week.
Okay, next week we have Rock City.
Rock
is it?
City Paranormal Research Team.
Cool.
Yep, that's Kim and Aaron
And
at
we will
Arkansas.
see you. We'll see you there. All right.
Yep.
Hey guys.
Bye,
Bye, folks.
y'all.
Good night.